We'll be getting started in just a moment. We just want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be admitted. Thank you. In the meantime, please feel free to share where you're joining us from. Right. People are joining us from all over the country, and we'll be starting in just a moment. All right, I think we're ready to get started. Greetings and welcome to the April 2026 National University Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Nancy Rowland Heinrich, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Vice President of Community Engagement for National University. I am proud to be the founder and host of our NU Speaker Series, which we started in July of 2020. And tonight's episode will be the 67th episode. We've had just a wonderful group of presenters on a wide variety of subjects, and I think you will find tonight that that will be true as well. All of our past webinars have been recorded. I think there's just an exception to two or three. And please note that you can review any of the past episodes. We'll post a link in the chat because there's really some interesting topics that you might want to listen to. We appreciate everyone joining us today, whether it's your first time attending the NU Speaker Series or if you've attended many of our past sessions. In our audience, we want to welcome our National University alumni, current students, faculty, staff, and the many community members who follow our series. National University prides itself on being in and of the community, so we truly appreciate our virtual audience joining us from throughout the country. And as you can see from the chat, we have representatives from all over. I promise you this next hour will be well spent with our speaker as well as our moderator. But just for a moment, I wanted to share something about National University. For those of you who aren't aware, National University is about to celebrate its 55th anniversary this November. We were started in 1971 and founded by a retired Navy captain, Dr. David Chagos. Currently, almost 50% of our undergraduate students are military affiliated, and the university provides academic programs to more than 50,000 students annually, and those students are enrolled in about 125 degree programs at the undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral levels. NU has an impressive global network of more than 250,000 graduates, including some very distinguished alumni, such as tonight's moderator. We're very excited because commencement is just around the corner. So on May 15th and 16th, we will have our commencement ceremonies at Front Wave and be adding to the number of graduates from National University. But now it's time to introduce today's topic and our speaker. And the topic, as you've seen, and the reason you're all here, is you want to know what nobody told you about retirement, separating fact, fiction, and fear about your financial future. And the best person we could find to deliver that message is today's speaker and subject matter expert on this area, Amanda Taylor. Amanda identifies herself as a business and wealth strategist, working with businesses as well as individuals to not just look at profit or generating income, but how it gets used and sharing strategies on short-term and long-term planning. She gets involved with people on the topic of expanding your empire to better inform individuals and organizations on building portfolios and diagnosing your individual situation to strengthen your current situation as well as your future and building your own legacy. Amanda is a graduate of University of North Texas. So you will find out more about Amanda's professional transition and her background throughout the discussion. I encourage audience to submit questions in the Q&A, and following a brief presentation by Amanda, we will also invite today's moderator, Dr. Julie Ducharme, to join us. And Julie is a National University alumni and the founder of and CEO of She Talks. She will lead a dialogue with Amanda to ask many of the probing questions we all need answers to. Following the dialogue, we will open up to the audience where you can submit your questions in the Q&A, and we will try to address as many as possible through the moderated discussion. Audience, I hope you are ready to learn from Amanda Taylor as she enlightens us on what nobody told you about retirement. So, Amanda, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, so much. Thank you, National, for showing up today. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, I am not yet a graduate of National, but maybe I gotta get my higher education in order. I saw so many people in here scrolling through. I saw one Colorado really fast, and I just moved to San Diego from Colorado. So, hi, Colorado. Hi, San Diegans. I love this weather. Very excited to be here. And yeah, I want to talk to you guys today about retirement and from maybe a different lens than you've been talked to about it before, because I'm not a financial advisor. And that's probably a good thing for this conversation. I'm an investor. And like Nancy said in the beginning, I'm a business and wealth strategist and I'm an educator. And everything that I'm going to talk about today is based on publicly available data and really my own experience building wealth as an entrepreneur. I don't have an employer sponsored retirement plan. And when I got to a point and I realized no one's coming to save me, I better figure this out. And so I did. And as we go through this, I'm just going to point out some things, but nothing I say is personalized financial advice. We know that. You should always work with a licensed professional, but I do want to say something about that because I think it matters. Most licensed financial advisors, they are genuinely trying to help you, but their license comes with restrictions on what they can legally advise you on. And they're limited to what products and vehicles within their specific licensing scope that they can recommend. And I learned this in my own scenario. I had started dabbling in real estate investing and I went to my financial advisor and I was like, I want to do more of this stuff. And was talking about pulling money out to invest in real estate. And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. Don't do that. Well, after I thought about it, I'm like, oh yeah, you don't get paid if I do that. So makes sense. So I always say be careful, you know, who you're getting advice from and what they get paid if you take it. So looking at big picture, are they commission based? Do they want you to buy a specific product? What are they legally required to do? All of these things, and just knowing that you want somebody who has a fiduciary responsibility to have the whole lens, the whole picture, and your best interest at heart, because that's what we need is someone who's looking out for us. So I want to show you a wider view. Now, unfortunately, our sound isn't working, but I'm going to tell you what this this clip is just funny because Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler are funny to begin with, but they are sitting in front of their financial advisor and she's telling them they don't have any money and they're like, "No, this account says 401k." And she's like, "No, it's a 401k. If you liquidate that now, you might have $5,000." And they're like, "Well, where did the other $396,000 go?" And she's basically telling them that they're idiots. I wish I could have played it, but their reaction in this scene, I think, is a reaction a lot of people have when they look at the full retirement picture for the first time. It's like denial, it's confusion, a firm belief that the number is probably wrong. Um, well, it's not usually wrong. That 401,000 401k joke, it's funny until you realize how many people genuinely don't know the difference between what they think they have and what they actually have. And the part that not a lot of people talk about, when most people look at their retirement balance, they see a number that they assume is what they will have in retirement, but it's not. And we'll get into that more. But that number hasn't been touched by inflation yet. Every year between now and when you retire, that inflation is quietly shrinking what money will actually buy. That number hasn't accounted for taxes, depending on your account type. The IRS is going to take their share when you start withdrawing. And that number hasn't accounted for fees, investment fees, expense ratios, advisor fees. These are all small percentages that compound quietly in the background for decades. And they can cost you tens of thousands of dollars over time. So the number you see in your account isn't necessarily your retirement. It's a starting point for a conversation that a lot of people aren't having, but we're going to have it today. So that number on the screen, 1.46 million. That is what Americans now believe they need to retire comfortably. And I've been going around running my mouth saying it's 1.26 million. It went up. And I want to be really clear about that before we have a panic attack. It went up 200,000 in a single year. Not because people got greedier, not because retirement got more luxurious, but because eggs cost $4, because healthcare keeps climbing, because people are living longer than any previous generation in history. And, nobody really feels safe anymore about Social Security being there in the way they planned. I am a proud Gen Xer. We had the best music, we had the best TV, we had the best movies, but I sure don't believe that Social Security is probably going to be there to support me when I get to retirement age. And that's getting to be a variable. Thank you for all the claps. Go Gen Xers. The forgotten generation. So that number, that 1.46 million, it can be terrifying. It's maybe completely made up. It's just an average. It's not made up in the sense that it's wrong, but your number's personal. Okay. It depends on where you live. San Diego is going to be different than Memphis, Tennessee. What you want your retirement to look like, what other income sources you have, how long you plan to live. Nobody knows that. But a dozen other variables. If you live in a rural town, you retire at 67, you've got a paid off home and a pension, you have a very different number, again, than somebody in San Diego who wants to retire at 60 and travel the world. But here's why I'm starting with that number. It sets the context. It tells us what the target looks like. And in about 30 seconds, we're going to look at where most people are. And that gap is the entire reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you today. So again, 1.46 million. Now, what the average person 55 to 64 has saved across all their retirement accounts. And I think we have a poll of who all is in the audience, of what your age range is, what generation you're in. If that hasn't gone out yet, I'd love to see that. But 54 to 6 or 55 to 64 has saved across their retirement accounts combined is about $185,000 compared to 1.46 million. Now, when we talk Social Security, that's replaces your pre-retirement income about 38 cents of every dollar right now. Hey, Gen Xers are winning in the poll. I'm happy about it. Now that last one again, 38 cents of every dollar. Social Security was never designed to be your whole retirement. And at the time it was invented, I think the average life expectancy was like high 50s. So it was designed to be a floor, a supplement. And the average Social Security benefit right now is like $1,900 a month. So for most people, it's nowhere near enough to maintain their lifestyle. And most experts agree that you need to replace somewhere between 70 and 80% of your pre-retirement income to live comfortably. And so if Social Security is getting you 38, that means you have to come up with the other 32 to 42 cents from somewhere else. So now, people in the room with 401k or 403b, I don't know if we have a poll about that question. All right, Gen Xers are ruling the room. Love it. 401k or 403b or a pension, those are real advantages. If you have an employer plan, get this, you are ahead of roughly 59 million Americans who have no access to any retirement savings vehicle at all through their employer. Again, I'm an entrepreneur. I work with entrepreneurs and small business owners every day. Less than 13% of them have any retirement vehicle, any exit strategy, any legacy plan. So if you have one of those plans, count yourself lucky. But the having a plan and having enough in it are two completely different things. So we want to look at what that means. And one more thing I want to throw in about Social Security for my Gen Xers, since you're all in here, if Congress doesn't step in, it's going to be depleted by mid 2030s. Now, does that mean it disappears? No, but it could mean automatic benefit cuts of 20 to 25%. So my Gen Xers and younger, that's not a distant hypothetical. That's a real planning variable. So I'm not saying panic. I'm saying plan accordingly. I'm not relying on it, but all right. So be honest with yourself for about 30 seconds. How many of you have said or thought or quietly believed at least one of these three things? Like Social Security is going to take care of it. Or my retirement account, my 401k, my 403b, my pension is going to be enough. Or my favorite, I'll figure it out when I get there. So you don't have to raise your hand in public. Just be honest with yourself because I believed all of those things at some point, and I work in this space. Now, we just covered the Social Security myths, covers less than half of what you need on a good day. The employer plan myth is trickier because it feels responsible, and it is responsible. Having those plans or a pension is a genuinely good thing. Those are powerful tax advantaged vehicles. You should absolutely be contributing to them, but there's a difference between having the right tool and using it the right way. So we'll look at all the age groups. I know we just looked at 55 to 64, but we're going to look at everybody. And the I'll figure it out myth is the most expensive one on the list. And I say that with genuine compassion because I understand why people say it. Retirement feels far away, like when you're 30. It feels overwhelming when you're 50, and it feels late when you're 65. Now, none of those things are actually true. But the longer you wait to engage with this, the more expensive the solution becomes. And time is the single most valuable asset in retirement planning. So you can get more money, you can get more income, you cannot get more time. And every year you wait, you are paying a price that compounds quietly in the background, whether you're paying attention or not. So, age, now these figures, because I did a ton of research, come from the Federal Reserve of Consumer Finances. Okay. This is the most comprehensive look of American household finances. They conduct this every 3 years. These are the median figures of what people have saved for retirement, keeping in mind that 1.46 million goal. So find your row, take a breath. Under 35, they've got 18,000 saved, all the way up to 65 and older, roughly have 200,000 saved after a lifetime of working. That's the median total retirement savings for Americans at the peak of their retirement years to 1.46 million. That gap is not a rounding error. That is the entire ballgame. Okay. And now I want to talk about something that we're not talking about enough because if you don't have a 401k or a 403b, let's say, or you do, and then you have some extra money sitting in your bank savings account. And I want to say this as kindly as I possibly can. Your savings account is not saving you. The average traditional savings account might be paying you like 0.1% interest right now. And I'm not kidding, 0.1%. So if you have $10,000 sitting in a regular savings account, your bank is handing you $10 a year and acting like they're doing you a favor. High yield savings accounts are better. They're paying 3.5 to 3.8% right now. If you are going to keep cash liquid, that's absolutely where it should live, or there's some other vehicles. But then you're barely keeping pace with inflation on a good day because that's running at 3 to 4%. So in a best case scenario with that high yield account, you're treading water. In a traditional savings account, you're losing ground every single day. While the number in your account stays exactly the same, that dollar you have sitting in your account today in 20 years will have the purchasing power of about 45 cents. So your money's losing a race it doesn't even know it's running. And your bank's not telling you that, certainly, because they want to borrow your money to lend it to somebody else at 7, 8%. But that's just me telling you what the banks don't want you to know. I do that a lot. But I do want to acknowledge this because a lot of people are thinking when I have these conversations, maybe this is all well and good, but I'm barely covering my bills. I don't have any extra money. This conversation is for other people. I want to speak directly to those people for just a minute before we go any further. The answer isn't to wait until things get better because things don't get better on their own. They get better when you make a decision to take a specific action. And that action doesn't have to be big. I talk about micro actions all the time. It just has to get started. If you have one of those accounts, a 401k or a 403b, increase your contribution by 1%, just one. Most people genuinely can't feel that coming out of their paycheck. And then if your employer match, if you're not getting the full match, start that. That's free money and it's part of your total pay package and you're just giving it back. So stop giving it back. If you truly have the margin, don't have any margin at all. Financial literacy is free. Library's free. Webinars like this are free. The gap between where you are and where you want to be starts closing the moment you decide to understand your situation. And that's why I think these conversations are important. It's not to make you feel bad about this huge gap that we're in. It's just to acknowledge that some time, some expertise, and a willingness to learn is going to get you way farther ahead. Now, this looks crazy. It's a lot on this slide, and that's intentional. Um, these are all the things outside of what my parents told me. Go get a job, work there for 30 or 40 years, contribute, max out your 401k, and you'll be fine. Well, that didn't work for me because I changed jobs out of college. I got a marketing degree. I changed jobs like people changed underwear as soon as I got out of college. I didn't know what I wanted to be until I was in my 40s. And I took the entrepreneurial route, which certainly did not come with a 401k. So somebody's got to get some wealth building somewhere. And these are the other things that I talk about. I know it's a lot. Real estate rentals, you don't have to be a landlord or flipping houses. There's real estate lending, REITs, there's index funds, there's dividends. I put all this in here not to overwhelm you, but to show you the ocean. This is just a partial list, the ocean, because most people have been handed two tools. And that's the whole toolbox, a retirement plan with work and Social Security, maybe a savings account. And that's it. But that is not the whole toolbox. That is not even close. And now I do want to be clear, every single thing on this slide carries risk, all of them. Some require significant capital, some require time, some require expertise, all require due diligence. I'm not standing here telling you to go do all of these things or any specific one without proper research and guidance. But what I am telling you is that, like I said, this ocean is dramatically larger than anyone has showed you. So the people who retire with real options, not just a number in an account that they can't touch without a penalty, they built layers. And they didn't put everything in one bucket and hope for the best. They understood that each of these tools solves a specific problem. Real estate hedges against inflation. Annuities create income that you can't outlive. Life insurance, structured correctly, builds tax advantage wealth. Trust protects what you've built and direct where it goes. So you deserve to know that this ocean exists. You deserved to know it a long time ago, and now you know. So before we get into the Q&A, I just want to leave you with something that isn't a checklist or a calculator or homework assignment. I want to leave you with this question. Someone in this room is going to take what they heard today and do something with it. They're going to go maybe look up their Social Security estimate. You can do that on the Social Security website. You're going to increase your contribution by that 1%. You're going to have a conversation maybe that you've been avoiding or start learning one thing on that list that you've never explored before. And 10 years from now, that person's going to be in a fundamentally different position than they would be if they hadn't shown up today. And that person could be you, not because you have the most money, that's a myth, but because you started, but because you made a decision. So the gap is real and it exists across every age, every career, every plan, but so do the tools. So retirement's not about fear, it's not a magic number. It's about building options before you need them. And I think it's about having a choice to stop working when you want to and not when you have to. So, thank you.
That was wonderful, Amanda. And thank you. This is a tough subject, right? Money. Money is just tough. And
Yes.
I know whenever I was growing up, this wasn't a subject that was discussed. It just wasn't something. And I always say I made every mistake in the book about money. And, never be ashamed of making the mistakes because that's how we learn. But since you're here today, we can make some less mistakes by listening
I
to
hope.
some of your advice. And there's some great questions here in the Q&A. If you're wanting to list your questions, drop those in the Q&A. It's much easier for me to see them versus in the chat, which is moving really fast.
Mhm.
Um, but actually, something you touched on, and I saw a question here, and I thought it'd be great for you to expand on, is someone said, what about life insurance? Is that a good idea? And I know you just briefly went over that, but maybe we could dig a little bit deeper on that.
Yes. And again, I'm not licensed to sell it, but I do have a policy that I actively use, that I'm using to build wealth to invest in real estate. So, as a user of this policy, I fully uh, support it. You're going to talk to 100 people and you'll get 100 different answers. It is a policy that is not a term policy. When you buy a term life insurance policy, you pay a monthly fee for 10 years. And if you don't pass away, that money went in the garbage. If you have what is called a permanent life insurance policy or a cash value life insurance policy properly structured, that is actually growing in cash value over time. It is compounding, and compound interest is what Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. And so when it's sitting in there growing in interest, you can actually borrow against that policy and be your own bank, as they say. You can use your money while you're still alive, and that money is continuing to grow while it's in the account. I see someone has IUL accounts. Um, there's IULs, there are whole life policies. They work very differently. It depends on what your goals are. So I'll say that.
Another really good question that was asked, which I think, I know what's the average debt in the US? I think I've heard it's over $100,000 that people have, like the average debt of a person. Is it more than that? That
I
was
think
like
it's less. I think it's less than that.
less than that. But one of the
I
really
hope
good
it's not 100,000.
one of the really good questions in here was, what if you're close to retirement and you're in debt? What are some options to help you get ready for retirement?
If you're in debt, while the snowball, if you've heard about that, you really need to consolidate your debt, and that's huge. There are balance transfer options available all the time that you can move things over to a 0% card. Those are offered all the time because what they think you're going to do is never pay it off and you'll end up paying the interest. But if you're diligent about it and you can move these over to balance transfer, or if you have one of these policies, I don't want you to go in debt with your policy, but you can borrow against it, pay off that debt. The interest on the loan at which you're borrowing from your policy is going to be maybe 5% versus 28% on your credit card debt. So it's about leveraging the right tools instead of just watching that 28% go off into oblivion. So it's about strategy and knowing which tools are in your toolkit.
So, a little bit along that line, we talk about debt, but I think this is another good question because you gave that number of 1.4 million for retirement. I don't know if anyone else went like that, right? Because then you went to the numbers, the max numbers, 200,000, right? And there was probably a few more like gasp. And so someone has asked, what if one is retiring in 5 years and does not have 1.4 plus million dollars in retirement savings?
Here's the deal. We're going to live a long time. I hope you're retiring and planning to live a long, healthy life. What that means is you can look at that ocean of things on that slide. And yes, this is recorded. And yes, you can talk to me and get a whole list and ideas. What you're going to find is you can find ways to build income in retirement to where you're getting paid off of interest income, off of dividends, off of other things that are building up while you're in retirement. And that's the point of these conversations is how do I fill that gap? And it doesn't have to be done before. You don't have to go to 1.46 and then retire. You have to be on your way to the right number for you and then find ways to continue to have income into retirement.
And some of your posting questions here are really great, but they're incredibly detailed for like your personal. So those ones I'm going to really encourage you to connect with Amanda afterwards because that's definitely a much deeper conversation per what you're doing. So I'm picking a little bit more of the open questions that might apply to many people who are listening right now. Um, so another one is this person said, I do have a pension and an IRA. However, I do not know if that and my RA will be enough. What do you suggest?
You have to look at the numbers. I don't know how much is in either one. Uh, that's the thing. If you have the tools, that's great. It's how much is in there. What are you using? And another thing is time. I talked about time being your greatest asset. If someone retired in 2008 and they had all their money in a 401k, th that was a bad time to retire. If, versus somebody who retired in, 2022. It's very different based on the timing of the market if that's where your money is in the market, which is another reason I have that ocean of things to kind of hedge against some of that market volatility. But I don't know how much is in your pension. I don't know how much is in your IRA. And therefore, I don't know if that's enough because that's what it is. How much time do you have? How much is in there? And how is it invested in that IRA?
And then, and I don't know about all of you, but I understand numbers. I run multiple companies, but this is not my expertise. And I do get like that cold sweat when I start thinking about retirement and money and all of those things, because there is so much information out there, Amanda. Like you Google it and it's like, oh my God, there's, thousands and thousands. And then sometimes, as you said, we go with what traditionally is happening, whether it's with our company. But I think for some entrepreneurs we might have in the room, like myself, we don't have 401ks. We don't like that. We don't always have the traditional retirement. Do you have some recommendations for maybe that entrepreneur, that small or medium business owner who might be looking at how they create retirement for themselves, but they don't have the same options as a big company?
Absolutely. And that's what I've kind of built my business around is building entrepreneurial businesses so that they can have a retirement because so few of them did. And, um, my partner, business partner, life partner, he watched his grandmother build a grocery store, had her own, business, and she built this thing up and she lost it because of a bad loan.
Mm.
And him seeing her struggle after that and all that, created this whole infrastructure that we've built to try to help people not only grow and scale their businesses and make money while they're working, but put that money to work outside of their business. The fact that less than 20% of businesses listed for sale actually sell. So if you're planning on your selling your business as being your exit strategy in your retirement, I hope it is. But just in case, let's start doing something on the side. And all of those things you can do Roth IRAs, you can do Roth 401ks now, you can do SEP IRAs that are in the market and mutual funds. You can do any of those things that were on that list. You don't have to, like I said, I flipped houses. That's how I got into investing in the beginning. You don't have to swing a sledgehammer even though that's the fun part, to be a real estate investor. You can just, put your money in certain funds that invest in real estate and let somebody else do the work. I mean, I can't even tell you the number of ways, but what it depends on is your personal emotional capacity for investing. Do you want to ride the waves of the market or do you want something more stable? How much time do you have? How much money do you have? We talked about that surplus. How much surplus do you have? How much, Are you willing to pay attention, or do you just want someone else to do it? Everything. There is no one size fits all approach. It is so customized to the individual. Even if you have a 401k or if you don't, you could have 10 different things in your basket, but it's got to be to what's aligned with your values. I have people I work with that they refuse to invest in certain industries. Great. I want you to do what's right for you because you're building the world that you want to leave behind or not. There's a book called Die with Zero, so maybe you don't want to leave anything behind. And I could, we could talk about that too.
My gosh, I don't want to read that book. I don't want to die with zero. I appreciate you talking about that because oftentimes when we make the leap, and I know some people will work a 30-year career and then they will use a portion of their retirement to build out a new company, right? And it's a big shift and how we utilize that money. And I'm glad that you touched on the selling companies because very often people do not build companies to sell them. They build the company, then they try and sell them. And that's a really key thing that I just want to point out that people like Amanda and her partner Chad help companies get ready to sell. So being someone who's owned my oldest business is 24 years old, like that's not something that is thought about when you first start a business. Oh, I'm going to build this business to sell it, because that wasn't the philosophy back then. So I think that's really important that you're hitting on those things and all those options and that there are options for entrepreneurs who aren't owning a mega corporation. So I really appreciate you touching on that. Here's a couple more 401k questions. I know that a lot of those are popping up. And this one says, after maxing the 401k match, emergency fund, and maxing out the Roth IRA, where would you recommend putting additional money? Traditional IRA or other investment options like gold, Bitcoin, or somewhere else?
Again, depends on your capacity. And I say emotional capacity on Bitcoin because I didn't get into Bitcoin for a long time. And as soon as I did, it went down. And so when I advise people on investing, that's a big one. Are you willing to ride that wave? Traditional IRA, it depends. There's the whole pre-tax or taxed later. If you're deferring tax, do you think you're going to be in a higher tax bracket or a lower tax bracket when you retire? Do you think things are going to cost more or less when you retire? So anything that you have in a tax deferred account, you want everything else in a pre-taxed or taxed advantaged or tax-free account to offset that because you're going to be paying taxes when you pull that money out of the 401k. And you need to consider that because it's going to be significantly higher than it is now by the time you get there. So that's what
So,
I balance out the tax strategy too on everything.
so how do we find someone to trust? That just popped into my mind. And as you're telling me
I
all this stuff, I'm like, I know you very well. So I'm like, yes, yes, everything Amanda tells me to do, I'm going to do. But for people around the country or maybe around the world here who are in different states or different places, like how do we know we're trusting the right person? How do we know? I know educating is part of it, but I'd love to, like when you started this, how did you find someone to trust and teach you the ways?
Luckily for me, I had mentors in real estate that I learned a lot from. And then through them, they were investing in real estate through their insurance and hard money. And I'm like, I've never heard of these things before. You can make money doing this? Like, what are you talking about? And I just got lucky, honestly, that I was in the right room. And then when I started to learn stuff from them, I went digging for more. And, you know this. I was in a 22-year marriage. He had a retirement plan because he had a 403(b). He was a teacher, and I didn't have anything. So when I got divorced, I was like, well, I really better figure this out now. And that's when I started learning all of this stuff. Now, I'm a nerd. I like to learn this stuff. I think it's super interesting. Most people don't want to spend the time learning it, and they shouldn't. I want you to be in your zone of genius, doing what you love, doing what makes you money, doing what makes you happy. How do you find someone to trust? It's a You're going to get different answers from different people. There's something to be said about intuition. There's something to be said about referrals from other people. If you have a community of people that you know and trust, and they have someone that they know and trust, That's great. I affiliate myself with people that I have vetted, that I have worked with, and I won't refer my clients to anybody that I haven't already vetted and worked with myself for that reason. But it's that's all I can say is
Yeah.
people that you know that you trust, and if they know someone that they trust, and use your intuition,
Yeah.
that gut goes a long way.
You mentioned something. I'm going to make you go back a little bit here. As you said, when you got divorced and you were looking at the retirement. I want to go back a little farther because part of your story you didn't share is what were you doing before you were doing this? And I think this is really important because oftentimes I hear people, in particular ladies a lot, say, I don't do money or I don't do finances or I just let them handle it. And so I want you to give us a little, I know we don't have a ton of time, but a little back on that of what happened, what pushed you from going from where you were into where you are now.
Yeah. No, I was in dental practice management for 15 years. Like I said, I had a marketing degree. I changed jobs like people change underwear. I was in management at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was in management at Victoria's Secret at Restoration Hardware. I did some healthcare, allied recruiting. I don't know. I did everything. And I ended up in dentistry because somebody said, Hey, you seem organized. Do you want to come work this job? And I was like, okay. And the same thing happened, 15 years later. I moved to Colorado from Texas for my ex-husband's job. And I was working for a dentist who was semi-retired. So I had some time and they're like, you seem organized. My husband and his friend just started this house flipping business. Do you want to work for them like 5 hours a week? And I was like, I don't know anything, but okay. And that's exactly when I started learning. I got curious. I got really excited. And yes, I was married. Um, and I started I wanted to make moves. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to take out a HELOC and start investing in real estate. I had learned all these tools and techniques that I knew worked because I trusted the people that taught them to me. He didn't quite trust me or anybody else. Different story for a different day. And I was told no, that, you know, d he will handle the finances. I didn't need to mess with that. Um, and so fast forward, I got divorced. I made my way. I found my niche. I love it. I also, Julie, have a platform for women for that same reason that we've spent a lot of time deferring our financial decisions because we think that's not our lane. And I did it. You take care of it. I don't know anything about that stuff. That's not my thing. Um, but it absolutely is. And nobody starts out learning this stuff. You just got to get curious and take it one step at a time and, take those micro actions to build that confidence. And we all deserve a spot at that table.
And I know you have a Build Your Empire
Yeah.
program. And I mean, for those of you listening, how does that sound? Build Your Empire. I like
Expand your
that.
empire.
Oh, sorry, expand, but you're building it too. I'm just throwing
Yes,
in
I am building,
expand,
expanding.
expand and build. But I love that because oftentimes I think people think that they can't build or expand their empire. And I think that's really important. Whether you're working in a 30-year corporate job or you're an entrepreneur, there are options. And I think that very often, traditionally, we are not encouraged to follow those options. And so I think this is a really important time. And I do have to say, even though we're Gen Xers, our younger kids coming in have been showing us how they can go on YouTube and make 16 million. And they're creating these types of digital businesses and things that are it's blowing my mind right now. Right. And so, I love what I do love about that group is that they've kind of broken the mold. They've been like, no, like I just don't want to do it. And they're figuring it out, which then makes me go, okay, well, if a 14-year-old can make 16 million on YouTube, like what can I do? Right. And so I love these options is that there are a lot of non-traditional options that are still going to open up the door for so many people with that. Now, you mentioned real estate, and some people have asked quite a few questions on real estate. One person said, I've been interested in investing in real estate for the longest time. How do I begin? Where do I start? You mentioned a few things, but is there a few tips for those beginners that you might say, this is the first couple things you might do if you're interested?
Oh my gosh, there are 100 different ways to invest in real estate. It's one of my favorite things because it's where I started. But again, like you don't have to start by investing in property. But I will say every property that I have bought, I've done it with zero money out of my pocket. So there's creative financing involved and there's really exciting stuff on that side. But you don't even have to own property. You can invest in what are called REITs, which is a real estate investment trust where you just give them money and they pay you interest. There's private lending to people like me who flip properties or invest in land development. We're doing you're aware of Laura Diaz. She's building a hotel in Peru. So you got to buy the land, you got to build the hotel. This is a big deal. And so we raise capital on that. So people give their money and get equity or interest, depending on the section. And that's how this rolls. You just give your money to the trusted people with the right due diligence and the right paperwork, and they do the work, and you get the equity or you get the interest. It works on a small scale with the guy flipping the house in the neighborhood next to yours, or it works on a big scale with a big fund doing large land development and multifamily projects. Um, there's tons of different ways to invest in real estate. I could give a whole other class on that. We probably can't do that right now.
No, I love that. And actually, there's another question here that I really like. You and I can both talk on this, Amanda. But a person said, can you give us example of how to monetize a skill? And then they put anything can be, how is that different from becoming an entrepreneur? And that's kind of an interesting question. I actually like that. Monetizing a skill versus being an entrepreneur. Do you have one off the top of your head that you're thinking of right now? Like
Well, I don't
monetizing?
think there's a difference, but
I
if you
think there can be a little bit. Like this is a good conversation. I feel like, okay, so I feel like an entrepreneur, right? You're diving into a full business, right?
you're
But
entrepreneurial if you're monetizing a skill.
yeah, but can you monetize a skill without having to go into a full-fledged
Yes.
business?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good question. You guys can post in the chat if you think that that is what you think about that too. Can you monetize a skill versus, okay, let's take something little. You're on Etsy, you make some really cool art stuff, but you're not really wanting a full-fledged business, but you are making money, right? I think that would be monetizing a skill.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
then,
And a lot of people, I am sure, in this audience or who will be watching after are in academia like you are. You have a certain skill set. You have very deep knowledge on a subject. Depending on what area that's in, there are consulting, there are
Mhm,
courses you can build off of that. There's so much you can do. Yeah, side hustles. That's
mhm.
the thing right now. And the gig economy or whatever. I mean, if you have a skill, there's a need for it and you can monetize it. It doesn't matter what it is, you can do it.
And I think that COVID opened the door for that, right? Because we had a lot of things got shut down, but then at the same time, a lot of people suddenly became incredibly creative in trying to figure out how to monetize and bring money in because they couldn't do it one way. And so, this is where all these little mini companies popped up. Etsy is one of like the top places that people search for stuff, believe it or not. Like, I think it almost beats out Google on searches. It's pretty interesting. And so, when you think about these side hustles, a good question and you may not be able to answer this question, Amanda, because this is probably a very specific one. But I know when people are retiring, many of them do a side hustle to bring in the extra money, right?
Mhm.
And even we joke in academia, someone will retire and then they say, oh, but they're coming back next semester and working part-time, which we're always like, well, that's funny, right? Why'd you retire? But can those side hustles be positive or negative to you if you're dealing with retirement?
That depends on you. That's totally an individual answer. I saw a news story the other day from the Associated Press that seniors are having to take on the gig work to cover their expenses in retirement. Have to and want to are two very different things.
Mm. And
Very
that's
different things. And that's what the issue is.
And that breaks my heart, to be totally honest.
Absolutely.
I went into a Jack in the Box and I saw someone who was quite senior working there and it broke my heart because I was
Yep.
like, that shouldn't be happening, right?
Yep.
But as you talked about the 1.4 million, I mean, I never thought I would ever hear that number be the number that you need to have for retirement. But realistically, in the world that we're living in, and the cost of houses, right? I mean, I remember what my grandparents bought their house for and what houses cost now. I never in my wildest dreams thought they would ever get that high.
Yeah.
So, people are looking for retirement. Now, my dad did it the right way. He got everything paid off. He got a great retirement. He's debt free and it's great for him. But if he was having to retire now, be totally different for him. So I think that's really important. And here's a good question. I like this too. Larry asked, how important is it not having all your eggs in the same basket? I just love that you said
Oh
that,
yeah.
Larry.
That's exactly what it is. When we were talking earlier about the pension, the IRA, or somebody was like, should I get it? What else should I get? That's exactly why, because you want to not just balance out the volatility, you want to balance out, again, like I said, the taxes. You
Mhm.
know, you want to balance out the taxes. If this one's going to have a huge tax bill when you get it out, then get something that's tax-free or tax advantaged. Like there's so many, juggling, plate spinning, how much time is required, how much money is required, how much, of your, not all of it is just little things. And yes, volatility for sure. I'm not going to put all my money in gold. I'm not going to put all my money in Bitcoin. I'm not going to put all my money in real estate, even though I love real estate. Absolutely. It's a matter of diversifying your portfolio. Everybody hears that, but not just in let me have a bunch of stuff. It has to be strategic.
Yeah, I like that. And we talk about, I think that the conversation has started to really come around, but generational wealth, right? We haven't really, if we go back 30, 40, 50 years, that was not a conversation. Generational wealth. How do we make sure that we have generational wealth that's happening? And obviously, one of the things is talking about not putting all your eggs in one basket. Another part for me that I learned later on in life is that to have multiple revenue streams, right? Because if anything, as I mentioned earlier, COVID showed us that if something got shut down, one of your revenue streams got shut down, if you had multiple other ones, you were okay. If
Mhm.
that was your only stream, you were scrambling to figure out what to do. And so when we talk about generational wealth, which I know this is huge for you and what you do because this is a passion of yours,
Mhm.
how do we shift that cultural idea so people start looking at generational wealth versus just a retirement?
And that's totally up to them too. Now, the statistics are that the boomers are more like, I'm going to use my money while I'm alive. I'm going to love my life. I'm going to use my retirement. Gen X and millennials are more in the I want to leave money for my family and for my kids. That's just statistically how it is right now. So it's going to change from generation to generation. And it's all in a matter of protection because we've talked about taxes, we've talked about inflation, we've talked about fees, we've talked about all this stuff. How are you protecting what you've built? And there are ways to do that that if it's structured properly, and this is the whole point of this conversation is you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I love not being any certified financial advisor, planner, whatever, because I can talk about whatever I want. And I like to run my mouth. So I want people to know everything, and I am completely agnostic to what you invest in. So if you ask me, should I invest in this or this? I don't care. I don't care. I want you to do what works for you, for your timeline, for your emotional capacity, for your monetary capacity, for your family's long-term vision. That's it. But I want you to understand what is available to you and not rely solely on just what you were told. Here it is, because that's not all there is.
Yeah, there's the culture shift and the mindset shift, which you can ask Amanda. We teach a mastermind called Beach Bum Millionaire Mastermind. And why? Because it's a mindset shift. Because when you think about money, what do you feel? What were you culturally trained when you think about money? I tell this to Amanda all the time. I don't have a negative towards money, but I was very much told by my grandparents, my great grandparents, depression is coming back. Stick your money in a coffee can. Don't take any risk. So culturally, that funneled through our family for a long time. And it really took a mindset shift and working with people like Amanda to really help me realize that I can take risks. I can take calculated risks, but I'm never going to create generational wealth for myself or my family if I don't start looking at these types of things and
Yep.
really thinking outside of the box. So we're down to the last 5 minutes, Amanda. This has been an amazing conversation. There are so many questions in here that are great questions. They're very, very specific. And so I believe that we have a slide or something, or we're going to put something in the chat so people can reach out to you, Amanda, and connect with you, ask those more in-depth questions. And then Nancy, did you want to come back on for any last minute conversations?
Yes, I was going to provide just a quick close with some updates, but if you want to take one more question, if there's one that really is burning that you think pertains to the majority of the audience, or Amanda, if there's any wrap up you want to quickly give, then we can move forward.
Yeah, what are your last best tips that you want to share with everyone?
If you do nothing at all after this, if you have money in a bank savings account, go take it out right now and go put it in bare minimum a high yield savings account. So there you go.
All right. So hopefully everyone has picked up some golden nuggets and tips, and I'm as guilty as anyone for, having money sitting in savings account, bearing very little interest at times. So thank you so much. I've had an opportunity to meet Amanda on a couple of occasions and heard her speak on a panel, and I just felt this topic is something that pertains to all of us. And I'm glad to see that we have a lot of people from multiple generations who've joined us this evening. And Julie is, of course, one of my favorites in the community, and we're very proud to have her as alumnus. So this was a great conversation. I think people learned a lot. And in closing, we'll provide Amanda's contact information, and then I'll give a couple of updates. Oops, before that, let me give you this information. We have a career transition seminar at National University's Scripps Ranch location. That's with Blair and Associates. So if any of you are changing fields, very excited to have game for open to alumni, staff, students, community members at the San Diego Seals. We'll be doing that on the 17th. And then we have another speaker series coming up on productivity begins at the end, and that we're really looking forward to. It's a returning presenter, which will be great. And then Alumni Association meeting coming up the 23rd and Navigator Networking. I'd love to thank Heather and Diane and Lindsay for helping us put together and promote our speaker series. So please follow us. We're going to have many more exciting topics that are already booked in the upcoming months. And at this time, Amanda, did we have a slide to share your information?
I didn't make one. I
Oh,
was supposed to,
okay.
They're,
but I
they're,
know it's going to go out.
they're
Yes, we'll
posting it in
send that
the,
out with the recording so people can
Yes.
reach out to you. And again, I think there was a lot of really helpful information, especially at this time when there's a lot of, competing priorities in the economy and in our lives. And so appreciate you taking the time to enlighten our audience and share your expertise. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Julie. And thank you to all the audience who join us for the NU Speaker Series. And we'll make sure to get this recording out to everyone who's here tonight and send that contact information. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.